rightly said by Dr. C.V. Raman, the real growth of a country was in the heart, minds, bodies, and soul of young men and women of the country. A very good morning and warm welcome to one and all present over here. I will request all the dignitaries to take their places on your side. To begin with, light and brightness has always been equated with positivity, and motivation is seen as harbinger of growth. To start us on this auspicious note, we will have now the land lighting ceremony. For this, may I request the dignitaries on dais to do the honors. Takes the privilege to extend my hearty welcome to all the dignitaries present on the dais and all the other guests present as an audience to a curtain program of National Science Day celebration 2021 with great joy and immense exultation. Flowers are bounty of nature, which express the humility and tenderness in human emotion. They reflect the warmth and welcome. With this, may I now request Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Monam Kumar Dhar to present a bouquet to our guest, Dr. V. Srinivasa Reddy, Director, CSIR. Thank you very much, sir. A true welcome is never complete without warm word and warmer gesture. I humbly invite Professor Rajnikant, Dean Sciences, to kindly accord a formal welcome address.
Esteemed Vice Chancellor, University of Jammu, the Chief Guest for today's function, Dr. V. Srinivasa Reddy, Director III and CSIR of Jammu, colleagues on the dais, worthy Registrar, Jammu University, Professor Pankaj Srivastava, Professor Vinay Chauhan, Deans, Directors, Heads, students, ladies and gentlemen, indeed a pleasure to be here this morning to have a program on Fertilizer for celebrating the National Science Day, which happens to be on February 28th. February 28th happens to be the day when the great discovery was made by Chandrasekhar Venkataraman in the year 1928, while working on some fundamental experiments related to light scattering, he found that when the light radiation falls on a transparent material, scattering takes place, and the most beautiful thing which he observed was that the scattered radiation carries home the same wavelength and amplitude. This phenomena came to be expected as a new phenomenon for the study of solids, crystals, and in the year 1930, C.V. Raman was conferred with the Nobel Prize in Physics, and he that time happened to be the first Asian scientist to have received this honor. In the year 1954, he was conferred the first Bharat Ratna award by the Government of India. In 1986, the National Commission on Science and Technology Communications proposed to the Government of India, the government of that time, that 28th February should be celebrated in the entire country as National Science Day. And since then, we are celebrating this event in schools, colleges, universities, medical, technical institutions, and all central research institutions included. The discovery of Raman opened up new vistas in the science of solids, and today we have more than 10 dedicated research journals world over which report the investigations of scientists which are carried out on materials using Raman scattering. So not going much into the details about the research and its impact on the scientific community after this discovery was made, I would like to welcome you all to this auditorium for listening to a wonderful talk being given by Dr. D. Srinivas Reddy, now a personal friend of mine. He is popularly known as a DSR in the scientific community. And he is a very celebrated chemist who has more than 200 publications to his credit, besides more than 35 patents which have been filed by him. He is the fellow of National Academy of Sciences and Indian National Science Academy. Professor Kamal Kapoor is going to formally introduce the speaker, but before I stop myself, I would like to add a line in the honor of my Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Dhar, that this university is known for its tradition of holding expert lectures, invited lectures, and he has continued this with much more vigor and enthusiasm. During his tenure, I think large number of such expert lectures have been delivered, organized physically as well as online, and all credit goes to him for his able guidance and administration. So I thank you all for having taken your precious time to be present over here to listen to a very exciting presentation from Professor DSR. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, may I request Professor Kamal Kumar Kapoor, Head Department of Chemistry, to introduce our today's keynote speaker, Oscar Rizal.
Thank you, Madhurika, for the invitation. So, thanking the Dean's Student Welfare, Professor Prakash, and his team for the pleasant responsibility of introducing today's keynote speaker, Dr. Dumbala Srinivas Reddy. and he is commonly known as DSR in chemical scientific community. I feel privileged to introduce him. So he obtained his PhD degree from the University of Hyderabad under the supervision of Professor Gautam Mehta. After completing 4 years of postdoctoral fellowship at prestigious universities in USA, he worked for 7 years in industries like This Laboratory Hyderabad and Tata Advinus Pune. There, his team discovered an anti-diabetic drug named levogliflozin, which is in phase 2 clinical trial. I think this is a matter for which we all need to just give it a applause. Okay, so his research interests include the total synthesis of natural products, medicinal chemistry, drug discovery, and crop protection. He has authored several publications and is one of the key inventors in many patents. So he has been honored with several prestigious awards. So I may not be just reading all those, but maybe some of them, they are Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in Chemical Sciences, Nasi Reliance Industries Platinum Jubilee Award, Sun Pharma Research Award in the field of pharmaceutical sciences, CVLI Award for Excellence in Drug Discovery, CRSI Bronze Medal in Chemical Sciences. He is elected Fellow of National Academy of Sciences as well as Indian Academy of Sciences. He is editor of Bioorganic and Medicinal Chemistry Letters and Elsevier Journal. So before inviting the DSR to this dais, I wish to thank our VC sir for creating an ecosystem where all of us, we can sit in a big hall and we can just talk about the science. So with a huge round of applause, so let me call upon Dr. DSR to the dais for his much weighty talk.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Before that, let me thank Professor Manoj sir and Professor Kapoor and Professor Rajnikant and many others. I know many of them, a couple of them I know. Of course, this is I'm really privileged to be here on this occasion, and also I would like to congratulate all of you on the occasion of Science Day. Of course, it's not today, but it's a whole week celebrations are going on everywhere. This is, again, I don't want to get into how the Science Day happened because Professor Rajnikant already described about it. And considering the time, we'll get back to lecture. So, before that, let me tell you that before coming to IIIM Jammu, so I know only one person in Jammu, that is Professor Kamal Kapoor. So I used to interact with him earlier and we used to meet in conferences and other places. So he is so nice of him. And after, of course, now I gathered many more friends, Professor Rajnikant and many other people actually I keep meeting sometimes, and I got good friends in short time. I'm very fortunate to be here, and I would like to look forward for more friends to gather by the time I leave from here. Thank you all. Okay, one more thing I wanted to tell you people that so every day, last at least couple of months, I think the last 3 months, whenever we go to bed, we always remember Professor Kamal Kapoor. Every day night. You know why? Something interesting. So my family came during the peak winter, and literally we were struggling actually. Like basically that day, like when we landed in house, and of course I was here for some time, but when my family moved, my son and my wife moved, it was difficult to walk also inside the house. It was so cold. And somehow we managed. Then I called him, since I know him very well, I called him. Then he got some electric blanket. So now we are so cozy. So that every day whenever we go to bed, we remember him. That's the connection. At least for winter season. So I never knew about this winter blankets actually. That's so nice actually. That's good. Okay? Okay. I like to move, but anyway, because of Mike, I had to be here. So I know I don't have to tell you about this laboratory. You all know about this laboratory. This is one of the 37 laboratories in India. This comes under CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. And our vision is to become center of excellence in natural product chemistry and biotechnology-driven drug discovery, integrating modern biology with chemistry. That's what our vision for this institute. And again, just to tell you, this is what we literally all over India, our laboratories are there. And here, that's where I came from. NCL Pune I was before coming here, and now came to northern part of our country, IIIM Jammu. It's a very prestigious laboratory. Again, I don't have to tell you about that laboratory, how many dignity, like very privileged people associated with this laboratory. And just to tell you something about this laboratory, and just for the benefit of students who are not much aware of this laboratory, we have like an integrated approach towards drug discovery, and starting from plants, microbiology, with natural product chemistry, pharmacology, and integrating into informatics, medicinal chemistry, and product development. And finally, we have fermentation technology, QC, QA, and CMC and CGS. Like there are so many departments integrating each other, and so we work together in aligning with each other. So what are the opportunities for students who want to enter into the IIIM and who want to become scientists like some of us? And you can join as a internship. That has to be like MSc, MPhil or MPharm. You need to have background. And of course you can also join as a PhD in various programs. Of course, for that you need, only thing is you need master's degree with valid fellowship by either CSIR or UGC or ICM or any other, from wherever you can get. And also Inspire also we encourage. And of course you can also join as a scientist. Fresh PhDs you can join as a fresh PhD plus postdocs. And also PhD plus industry experience. Actually, I am one of those people, PhD, postdoc and industry experience. I spent quite a bit of time in industry before joining into CSIR labs. This is one of the CSIR laboratory again. Okay, now with that, so I'll just talk about something science, about some science, what's going on in my laboratory. Of course, most of the work has been carried out at the National Chemical Laboratory in Pune. And here, we mostly work on application-oriented organic synthesis. So we strongly believe in collaborations. We have multiple collaborations in India and outside. And of course, major area is the total synthesis and medicinal chemistry. See, we look at these molecules. Some of these molecules we synthesize in our laboratory here. And in addition to that, we also work on these societal applications, like some particularly towards farmers' development. There's a crop protection and insect repellents and medicinal chemistry towards drug development. For some of the areas also listed here, what we work on specific areas. And here, in general, what we do is drug discovery programs as a medicinal chemist, novel molecules, we lead optimization, and also execution of total synthesis and biologically active molecules, and of course training manpower, PhD students, masters, and project assistants, and also summer intern. That's what our laboratory concerned at NCL. And why natural product synthesis? Because we always, at least most of the people who work on natural products, we have this justification that about 40% of the marketed drugs what we get in medical shops is related to natural products. And out of them, 80% of the commercial drugs derived from natural products require synthetic efforts, synthetic chemist efforts, because most of the natural products which we isolate from nature, they don't become as drugs as such. And also, most of the time they don't be available in quantities. We only isolate some milligrams, grams at the most. But we need, I mean, like probably if it is a good drug, you need probably quintals and multi-kilos we need. So that's where you need synthetic chemistry effort. And also, as such, they don't become drugs. I mean to say, like they have druggable problems, like sometimes solubility problems, sometimes toxicity problems, sometimes pharmacokinetic problems. So those things can be modified using synthetic chemistry. That's where synthetic chemistry comes into a major role play in discovering drugs. And also, in addition to that, particularly those who are working in organic chemistry understands, students who work on total synthesis, they get exposure to variety of reactions, which we believe that they become strong in their scientific skills, and definitely I can tell you that they become very tough mentally because of the challenges associated with this total synthesis field. Because unless you complete total synthesis, you cannot assume that the project is complete. So most of the time, we get stuck, students get stuck in the final few steps. So then you have to go back and make all the starting materials. Like it depends on your challenge, molecule size, but most of the time, unless you complete, you cannot call it as a completed project. And it offers structural modification, structural simplification, and supply of natural products. And here some of the structures I have shown here. These are the natural products which went on to become drugs. Again, I am not going to go through the details, but I spent some time on other parts of my lecture. So particularly if you look at this one of the natural product is reserpine, right? So this reserpine has a strong connection with India. And this is isolated in 1952 and from the dried roots of the Sarpagandha. Sarpagandha is one of the plants. This is Rauwolfia sarpentana, the scientific name. And of course, there are very big names associated with this one. Dr. Ramnath Chopra, who is the founder director of IIIM, and also other P.C. Ray and Professor Mukherjee and other Rannath Sen, Dr. Bose, Dr. Siddiqui. These are all people associated with this natural product, which has a strong connection with our Indian discovery. And also, I am fortunate to be part of this IIIM. Recently, I visited our Chata farm in Jammu. So there, actually, I was happy to see that this is all the Sarpagandha, the Rauwolfia plants. And another connection I have is when I was doing PhD with Professor Govardhan Mehta, my entire PhD work was on synthesis of reserpine. So that's another connection. So they have multiple connections to this laboratory. Okay, I would like to justify by another, of course, there are several molecules became drugs, determined that it works through mechanism called sodium glucose cotransporter, SGLT inhibition. So that's a very interesting mechanism. So it works through that. And structural modification gave them, like, of course, not our work, this one. This is T1095 from Japanese group. And that also has issues cropped up, like several issues, like including glycosidase cleavage. Look at this bond. Here, this aromatic ring and this sugar might be connected with O. So that is called O-glycoside. So in body we have glycosidase enzymes. So what happens is that cleaves that bond. So that will chew up that molecule. So later further work around this molecule led to this molecule C-glycoside. Here there is no problem with the glycosidase enzymes present in our body. So then they went on to become these drugs like dapagliflozin and canagliflozin. Like that, there are at least 5-6 molecules are upcoming as anti-diabetic drug, and they are really becoming blockbusters. Along those lines, when I was working in Adrenas Pune, and we discovered a molecule called licogliflozin. That time we used to call as a LIK066, and now it is called licogliflozin. Of course, it is in clinical trials now. If it becomes, we are hoping that another few years it may become drug. So if it becomes up, that's a big achievement. Even scientists like us who design molecule, of course with the help of chemists, we make that molecule, and it's a big satisfaction, good satisfaction for us to put molecule, design, synthesize, and put it into humans. That's satisfaction working in the industry. So now I'll tell you just a couple of case studies from our own research group. Here is a snapshot of molecules what we synthesized in our research group. So all these molecules are synthesized most of the time first time. And again, I'm not going to go through each of those molecules. These are all based on different activities. And I just tell you a couple of stories. So here is a molecule called hunanamycin. So hunanamycin is very closely related to riboflavin, right? So again, I don't have too much chemistry considering that I assume that some of the general audience are there. I kept as minimum as possible, but I also have to tell some chemistry, which is my core science, which I practice. So this is a hunanamycin, which is closely related to riboflavin. So it showed activity as an antibacterial activity against salmonella. It showed about 4.8 microgram per ml as a natural product. And since it is related to riboflavin, we believe that it is working through riboflavin synthase inhibition. So that is something interesting target, because riboflavin synthase is only present in bacteria, which is not present in humans or higher species, because we get riboflavin from food, whereas some of the bacteria they synthesize on their own. That means they need that enzyme, the riboflavin synthase. So if you can block selectively the riboflavin synthase, then selectively you can kill the bacteria without harming humans or higher species. That's the idea behind this one. This is why do you want to work on salmonella? Because it causes several people, several illness, and also 420,000 deaths occur annually in global burden. And we don't have statistics in India, but I can tell you that we can imagine that it can be much worse in Indian conditions. And in addition to that, when I work in industry, when I work in medicinal chemistries, I also look at how best we can prioritize molecules. In this case, we use Lipinski rule. This is one of the rules followed in medicinal chemistry. That is Lipinski rule of 5. So these are some of the parameters. So when we calculated for this molecule, so this everything fitting well. So there is no violation with respect to Lipinski rule. That's where we can prioritize some of these molecules. With this background, we set up goals to synthesize this molecule. Then what we did is we took the starting material. It's easy to synthesize. If you have corresponding diamine, if you heat with oxalic acid, diethyl oxalate, you get the solid crushed out. So take that molecule and take that compound and treat with prenyl bromide, and using some base, you get this monoalkylation. Then followed by cyclization, you get to tricyclic compound. Then you do a couple of more steps, that allyl derivative of 10. With sodium hydride, and you get to this material. And once you do hydroxylation, there's installation of 2 hydroxy groups there, then removal of protecting group gives us hunanamycin. So that's the beauty. So originally this molecule was isolated from marine sponge, from marine bacteria, 0.8 milligram. That means less than 1 milligram they isolated. So, but we could make more than 80 milligram. But still we are not satisfied. As a synthetic chemist, we want to make it more efficient. And so just look at what we did. So starting from diamine, already looking simple looking molecule. So cost of this 25 grams of this diamine, it's about $450 US, all this cost. So, and we took about 6 plus 5 steps to get to hunanamycin in about 7% overall yield. Whereas another plan we thought about it, this riboflavin, since it is very closely related to this, so probably nature is making true riboflavin by biosynthetic mechanisms. So then we looked at the cost. It's very cheap, 25 grams, $32 US. That is all this cost. It can be much cheaper if you go to bulk places. So then we discussed with my student. Student also got excited about it. Then we started the synthesis. What we did is we took the riboflavin and treated with some transformation, sodium hydroxide in presence of peroxide. You get to this basically cleavage of this particular thing. Then prenylation, and you can see that selectively you can alkylate in presence of this many hydroxy groups. N-alkylation takes place, and cyclization gives us final product, hunanamycin. So 3-step sequence. You can do multi-gram step. You can do no column purification required, and biomimetic approach, and overall yield is about 48% and 96% purity HPS. So this is basically we could make about 10 grams of this molecule in short time. So of course, not recently, a couple of years ago, one of my some of the summer interns comes to my group. I give them this one because it's easy to make. You can give riboflavin and few prenyl bromide, and the rest of things are available on the bench. So they can make easily this compound in gram scale. So that's also kind of easy experiment to do in laboratory settings without any much training. So that's the beauty of this particular synthesis. Once we make this compound, then we also wanted to understand whether we need proof. Although we anticipated that it's going through riboflavin synthase enzyme inhibition, but we wanted to have some proof. So for that purpose, I collaborated with Professor Macmillan, Southwestern Medical Center, and what we did is we did some experiments. So in this case, what we did is we took penultimate, this is a biosynthetic pathway, we took penultimate step there. We used E. coli, of course, and riboflavin synthase, and what we used decreasing concentration of hunanimycin, and we measured the riboflavin quantity, how much it is by mass. Then we have a beautiful dose response here, and we got basically indirectly we got proof that it is indeed working through riboflavin synthase inhibition. So once we have this one, we made several compounds, and we found that there are many compounds which are looking better, almost like so one of the compound is 4 to 5 fold better than original compounds. What we did is we also profiled into some other parameters which we can take it forward towards developing drug. In this case, metabolic stability, plasma protein binding, several parameters we measured, and some of them are looking very, very promising. And what we did is in this process, in this project, about 70 compounds we made which are similarly looking like hunanimycins, and identified about 8-fold potent FH1 compound, and also excellent PK profile. And we also tested whether how safe this molecule in animal models. We found that up to 2 grams per kg it is safe molecule. So that's where we are really interested, excited about this molecule. Now next is we are doing, of course, animal experiments. Still we are not successful with that particular strain, and now we are also looking at as a food preservative, can we use it? So we are also exploring further. So then next slides, next project. This is cladosporin. This is another interesting molecule. Again, this was old molecule in 1971. That was my year of my birth. That time it was isolated. Then why are we interested now? It's so old molecule. So because recently they found that this is what, although it is an anti-malarial compound, they found a mechanism, and they found a target for this molecule that is called lysyl tRNA synthetase. This particular it's like KRS. So this particular enzyme is working through this mechanism. Then it became very interesting to us, and also not much known about this selective, what is it called, structure-activity relationship around this molecule. Then we thought, why can't we do it? And if you look at this molecule, it has 3 chiral centers. Who are particularly from organic chemistry background, we can identify 3 chiral centers. That means about 2 to the power of 3. That means 8 isomers are possible, 8 compounds are possible. Then what we thought is, we understand stereo structure activity relationships. So most of the people aware of structure activity relationship. We wanted to understand stereochemical structural activity relationship. So for that purpose, so we designed all the 8 molecules. So there are 8 possible isomers. Then making them and testing them and coming up with the best molecule. So that's the goal of that particular project. This is very, very challenging to make all the compounds. And we made all the compound. One of my student came from IIT Madras. He was very, very talented person, and he made all the compounds. And we had all the crystal structures, 4 of them crystal structure, and we proved without any ambiguity all the structures. And again, I'm not going to do a synthesis. So what we found is, out of 8 compounds, 2 compounds, Clado1 and Clado5, seems to be the best binding. We did, again, we collaborated with one of my friend, Dr. Amit Sharma from ICGP. So he co-crystallized with that lysyl tRNA synthetase, and found that the 2 molecules bound to that lysyl RNA synthase. And again, accordingly, all the biological studies also supported for that, basically in Plasmodium against Plasmodium falciparum. And also we tested selectivity. Also we found about 100-fold selectivity compared to Plasmodium lysyl tRNA synthetase. So in summarize this particular project, what we did is we synthesized all the molecules. We subjected to co-crystallization. We got 2 co-crystal structures, and both of them found to be this compound 12 and compound 16. And then we went through this all the studies, all the biological assays, thermal shift assay, inhibition, enzyme inhibition, parasitic growth inhibition, and selectivity. We selected that 2 compounds are the best. So what we try to prove from here is, it's not that first time we have invented this particular concept. And we only showed that stereochemistry is going to play a very, very crucial role in drug discovery using this particular scaffold, cladosporium scaffold. That was the idea. Then now we are doing further optimization with this molecule. Now let's switch a little bit. So I know you all know about this insect repellents. So mosquito bites can potentially result in the transmission of several infectious diseases. So remain one of the major cause of concern for many people all over the world. And what are we trying to do here, my group? So look at these molecules, D, IR355. These are the molecules, these are the active ingredients present in our insect repellents or mosquito repellents, what we use in our homes. So you have this all out, good night, all right, all is there, right? In that, this active principle is some of these things. So because of long exposure and long time use, decades of use of these molecules, they are becoming resistant. So then now started coming this maxi beat, like basically you are increasing concentration. So although we don't have enough studies to support that most of them are safe, at least when you increase the concentration, we are using that one. So there is a need for new compounds to address these issues. Along these, just before going to laboratory work, and somebody asked you one question, like world's deadliest animal. So we always think big animals, right? Big animals. Always we can think of like a tiger, crocodile, elephant, and all those things. But according to analysis, so the deadliest animal is mosquito. Mosquito kills 7.25 lakh people every year. And next, deadliest animal is human. Human kills human beings. That is about 4.75. This is basically estimates. And of course, then you have other animals. They are all very tiny, nothing. Literally, they are very insignificant when compared to mosquito or humans, other killings. What we imagine always. So I really like this particular cartoon from Gates. So that's where if you can eradicate mosquitoes from the world, how many people's lives you can save. You can see. And along these lines, we came across a molecule called nootkatone. Nootkatone is a sesquiterpene, first isolated from this particular species, and later it is also found in citrus fruits. So it possesses impressive insect repellent and also insecticidal activity. That's where we became interested on this molecule. Of course, my laboratory also interested in working in natural products. That's where we became interested on this particular scaffold. What is interesting about it, this mechanism of action of nootkatone is believed to be blocking through a neurotransmitter called octopamine. Octopamine only present in insects, that is not present in humans or higher species. That's why if you can use such molecules, it will be safe molecules. I was reading in one of the blogs an insecticide which you can drink. So this is that kind of safe because it is isolated from fruits. Right? So with that background, we synthesize several molecules. And of course, I'm not going to the synthesis, but I just show you the summary of what we have at this moment. We have one of the molecule here, and it is of course a lot of synthetic efforts we went into this. We have a molecule which shows about 5 to 6, these are some of the selected molecules. It shows about 6 to 7 hours protection when we apply on our skin. It keeps away mosquitoes. So we are trying to develop further. And in addition to that, what we found is, something interesting about this, like it also has killing effect. Like it also kills, not only repels, it also kills mosquitoes. So I have some interesting video, I don't know if we play here, just like. Hey, keep coming. So this is something interesting actually. What we did is in NCL we have entomology group, and there we grow mosquitoes for experiments. So we took that conical flask and we with the different concentration, of course, 0.1, 0.01 different concentration we put in solvent, and basically rinsed in that conical flask, and next day we came, all the solvent will go away, and only active component will be there, and come next day morning and release mosquitoes. So what happens is most of the mosquitoes are dead. This is a real time, what we see there. You can move it. You can move to last. You can further. So basically most of the mosquitoes are dead by this time. Like only two minutes it takes. So go further, go further. Yeah, maybe one fellow is around there, but otherwise most of the mosquitoes are dead. You can close. So that's very, very simple experiment. What we did is our compounds not only repels, it also kills mosquitoes. That's very, very interesting. So open the file. Remove the duplicate. No. Go top. Go top. PowerPoint. Yeah, so what we did is, after identifying this compound, we signed agreement with one company who works with insect repellents and insecticides. So that is Ross Life Sciences. We signed agreement now. Hopefully they are going to take it forward. Of course, it's long already, because of Corona and other things, it got delayed, but hopefully something will work out. So that's the background about it. Now I'll switch a little bit about what organic chemists can do for crop protection, right? So we can control insects, we know that one, weeds, fungal diseases by making molecules in affordable manner. And look at this one, there's a natural product called strobilurin, and it's basically the natural compound, then several modifications on this molecule led to azoxystrobin. This is one of the best-selling fungicide. You can see this one, right? So I'm going to start this one. So like that, we can really, natural products also can become not only drugs, it can also be useful in crop protection. Right? Along these lines, our lab was interested in developing pheromones. Right? So look at this molecule, this mealybugs. These are big serious threats for controlling, these mealybugs are serious problems for farmers. Particularly you can see this small white powdery material, what you see on these grapes, papaya and pomegranate, many other crops. So although we don't have numbers, but one of the paper reads that a single mealybug outbreak in Punjab, which is our neighbor, so led to the deployment of insecticide worth of 500 crore. That's kind of information available in one of the paper. So that was only I could get. So what are the control methods right now we use? We use ladybird. It's like beetles we release in the plants and like crops. Then they go and eat that powdery material. That's one way to do it. So these beetles are very safe. And other one is bug blaster, basically wash with like a pressure pipe, so that all the powdery material, whatever the bugs, they go down. Then but on disadvantage is this bugs again, after a few days again it crawls up. That's not really safe, and that's not really better method. So another way is insecticidal soap. That is the best method people use, but that also has serious environmental issues and other problems associated with this one. Even export, you want to do export grapes or any other harvested material, then that has their own limitations. So there's a new method coming up is sex pheromones that can be used for controlling mealybug population. They are very, very sensitive and highly selective and very safe method. So in this case, what happens is these traps they use where they put pheromones secreted from female bug. They keep it on this material, this sticky material. It keeps small amount of this amount there, pheromone. Then what male bugs think that there is some female sitting there, so they all get attracted to that material. Then all male bugs get trapped here. So then you take out that sheet and burn it. If you do a few cycles, then you can eradicate all male population. So then there won't be any male population. Then you can stop reproduction of these male bugs. That's one way to do it. So in this connection, what we did is we identified one molecule, one pheromone. We synthesized both plus pheromone and minus pheromone. One of my students, Remya, she joined at for PhD. She made both these compounds. Then we wanted to test it. So for that purpose, we collaborated with Professor Miller in University of California. So and what we did is we sent only 1 milligram each. 1 milligram of plus isomer, 1 milligram of minus isomer. We sent both the isomers and sent to Professor Miller, and they did experiment in half-hectare vineyard in California with that 1 milligram sample. That's very, very powerful. So what we got the result is when this racemic compound where we mix both plus and minus, equal amounts we mix, and this is about 20 microgram. And this is 10 microgram, this other is 10 microgram, minus and plus, different isomer. What we found is, plus isomer is found to be superior activity when compared to racemic, which is half of its quantity. Like this is 20 microgram, this is a 10 microgram. And of course, we also saw small amount. Very interesting thing is, particularly students should identify this one. So accurate this assay, that enantiomer purity was not that much, about 98% enantiomer purity was there. So even that could reflect in biological assay, that too in insect that mealybugs attracting assay. That's so beautiful. So what we did is, after publishing paper and patent a few years ago, then another group from New Zealand contacted me to send same sample. Then we sent another 1 milligram of each sample to New Zealand. And again they tested, I particularly said Dr. Andrew Tweedle, he works in this plant and food research in New Zealand. They tested this particular compound, they reduced the quantity, 10 microgram of plus 1, 10 microgram of minus 1, of course 20 microgram of racemic material. So exactly we reproduce and results. So look at the beauty of this one. One is in US we did, one trial we did it in New Zealand, completely geographically 2 different locations. So we found that both places is working well. So then next question comes to me or anybody who are working in India, what happened in India? So we did try in Nasik, which is close to Pune. They also grow vineyards. But what we found is we did not find encouraging results. Of course, whether we don't know how to do that particular experiment, or we don't know whether that particular species exists here. Even we had a difficulty in finding out exact species, that mealybug species present in India or in Nasik vineyards. So that's where we could not produce results in India, although we produced in US and New Zealand. Of course, we do have plans. Another group is interested in Australia to conduct this trial. We need to make those components in it. So, the last part of my talk, that is very interesting, very close to my heart. So here is the drug discovery process. I'm sure many of you are aware of this process. I don't go to the details. So starting from target identification, validation, all this process, lead optimization, lead identification, lead optimization, and preclinical development phase 1, 2, 3, and post-marketing. These are the regular process, right? So during this, in particularly, I want you to focus on lead optimization. What happens in lead optimization is you make several analogs, almost like close to 5,000 to 10,000 molecules you need to make to optimize a compound. because this is a very big exercise. Of course, I'm talking about industry point of view, not in academic settings. So you make this many compounds, and again you need to go through all these primary assays, secondary assays, target assays, ADMET, and in vivo, in vitro, in vivo, and safety. So all these things you need to do. In this process, so the company has to spend so much money into this one, right? It's a conventional approach. And recently, what new approach is coming up is, can we incorporate deuterium into the already existing scaffold or silicon? Of course, most of the information is known out there is with the deuterium incorporation into known scaffold, so that you can minimize these steps. In this process, literally you need to make as minimum as 1 molecule or about 50 molecule maximum you can make. And again, you don't have to go through this process because the scaffold already tested everywhere. It already went through this full cycle, the scaffold. That's where big advantage for putting using this silicon or deuterium. So most of the information out there is with the deuterium, but very few groups, like one of the group is our group, is very much interested in pursuing that silicon. So why silicon? Because silicon is very close to carbon, like carbon's brother. So it's a large covalent radius and no intrinsic toxicity profile, increase in lipophilicity, access to compound that do not have stable carbon. I'll show you how it is important. These are some of the molecules already out there in the public domain and with in different trials. And again, you can't put silicon wherever you like it. You need to put silicon strategically, depending, like you need to understand the structure-active relationship where it will be useful, beneficial. For example, I'll tell you. So here, if you have corresponding halopyridine, the corresponding molecule is carbon. So what happens in body is body metabolizes that particular molecule, leaves us the double bond compound. So that is a mutagenic compound. So by putting silicon, you don't get that double bond compound. You don't get eliminated that hydroxy group. That's why this molecule is expected to be safe. And similarly, if you want to push molecule more into cancer tissues, you need to increase the lipophilicity of the molecule. So for that purpose, they put the silicon, and that increased tissue penetration towards cancer tissues. So that's another development. Another interesting thing is, here I would like to pay your attention. See this corresponding carbon compound, see OH-OH, that is exactly transition state mimic we call. So only theoretically it is possible. It is not possible to make those compounds, right? So, but whereas if you have a silicon in place of carbon, if you put silicon, you can make literally those compounds, di-OH. That is exactly transition state mimic of your compound. And this is our lab contribution. What we did is we incorporated silicon to improve brain concentration. I just show you that one. So what we, again, these are some of our group activities. We do quite a bit of work on this one, and we are multiple projects under this theme is going on in our laboratory. And here look at this molecule called linezolid. This is a marketed drug, Zyvax, and which is used for the treatment of various infections. It is available as a tonic, ointment, tablets, everywhere. It is available. And corresponding another related molecule called sutazolid. The difference between this and this is the oxygen, here is sulfur. So particularly sulfur, what happens in body is sulfur gets oxidized to sulfoxide and sulfone. And similarly, this oxygen ring, this particular ring, it metabolizes that cytochrome P50 oxidizes next to oxygen. It gives ketone and lactone, the carbonyl component, carbonyl inserts, and it cleaves. And so that's one of the possible metabolism. So what we thought is, it's of course we thought initially it's a crazy idea to replace sulfur or oxygen with silicon. But what are our expectations? It will show similar activity and expected to have better pharmacokinetic properties. It increases brain exposure, and particularly treating meningitis, brain infections, it is useful, that molecule. And in addition to that, it is a novel compound. We will get patent rights because not many people, at least in world and patents, they don't cover the silicon. Right? That's the advantage. These are the expectations from this silicon idea. And this bacterial meningitis is a serious problem. Again, this is another justification for us is linezolid as such, it was used in treating patients who are suffering from meningitis. That's a kind of another support for us to work on this linezolid scaffold. And it is very even for detecting are diagnosing this bacterial meningitis is very, very painful even to look at, because even if you want to detect, you need to take out, there is something called lumbar puncture they use. They withdraw the spinal fluid and you look for bacteria. So that's kind of a painful thing. This is of course mostly common in children. And if we can develop molecules, what is the problem? Most of the antibiotics which are out there in the market, they don't cross blood-brain barrier. So our idea is to push molecule into brain, particularly with the antibacterial scaffold. So along these lines, we made this compound, and not only that, we made several oxazolidine molecules. About 35 oxazolidines we made around the scaffold with the Silicon Incorporation, and we collaborated with different biology groups. And what we have at this moment results is this is a linezolid original molecule. And the moment it is actually 0.12 BP ratio, that means blood to plasma ratio, that is about 0.12. That means about 12% of your plasma concentration goes to brain. The moment you put silicon, it jumps into 1.27, like a 10-fold, we have like a 25-fold, even 35-fold increase in blood plasma ratio. So that's really, really exciting for us. So this particular invention, although it is, we anticipated, but the kind of results what we got is very, very pleasant surprise for us. We got excited about it. Of course, thanks to our VIRAC program, they supported us in doing these experiments in collaboration with the industry, that is Incogen company. And we wanted to take it forward, but what happened is, like most of the places, we don't have animal models with brain infections. Like most of the people are working with infections, but very few people working with the brain infections. So still we are struggling to find appropriate place to take forward this molecule. Unless we test it and show it in animal models of brain infections, we can't really put it into humans. So that's where we got little stuck on this one. Okay, last slide. This is another story. So vitiligo, I'm sure many of you are aware of this particular disease. I don't call it as a disease. It is more of a psychological problem. As such, there is no serious problem. There is no life and death issues with this problem. But in India, people get confused with, because of our color, people get confused with leprosy. So it's not the case. This is completely safe disorder. So only thing is, people who are particularly at least in adolescent age, so people really, they go through this tremendous psychological problems when people who has this problem. So that's the only major problem. Otherwise, I said there is not a problem with this one. But again, we need to find a way to treat this disorder. So through what we did is IGIB and Dr. Rajesh Gokhale's group and my group chemistry and their group biology, we came together and we worked out together and we found out some interesting scaffolds. And then later, the patent was out licensed to a company called Ahamio. And of course, if everything goes right, they get about, CSR will get about 5.4 crores license agreement. That was one of the successful story with working with partnerships and again out licensed to industry. So in short, what I try to tell in last 30-40 minutes or so, so we worked on application-oriented organic synthesis, in particular total synthesis of natural products, medicinal chemistry, and crop protection. And we identified few leads and which can potentially become useful in the near future. And again, all these things are possible in short time in my group because of all the dedicated students what I have. And of course, this photo is a little bit old, couple of years, much before Corona came in. And because of their hard work and dedication, I am here and what I am today. All these people, they built really my career. And in 2010, I joined. And these are the people who joined, who left my group, who already graduated. These are the present group. Of course, a couple of them already graduated, but these are the first set of students who really built my career. So any young faculty there, I think young faculty has, like, you have to be very, very choosy and lucky to get good people. They can really make or break your career. That's actually very, very important in our professional career. And again, these are the people who got support from various departments. Of course, I'm lucky to have a good collaborations in India and outside. Without, again, their collaboration, although we only know how to make molecules, but connecting those people, and they really created values for our molecules. Without their contribution, I don't think we would have done much in our. And I do have one slide. This is more of kind of advertising slide for this journal. So they always requested me that whenever I give talk, please show this slide, one slide about this journal. So about a few years ago, I became editor for this journal, Bioorganic Medicinal Chemistry Letters, and it's published from Europe. And this work, this journal is from elsewhere. It covers interface of chemistry and biology. And if you or your friends are working in the area of medicinal chemistry, chemical biology, drug discovery and design, please do submit papers. We will be happy to consider the paper. And thank you all for your attention, sir. Any questions or suggestions? Okay. You want to tell something? Or?
Yes, sir, it's a really very nice talk, and it's a really very nice talk, and thank you for giving such a good talk. I was just wondering, because I am not from the field of chemistry, how do you separate molecule from the natural product? Because natural products must be having a number of molecules, and you are interested in one particular molecule. How do you separate that?
So we use multiple techniques. First we use solvent extraction with the different polarities. Then you get different fractions, like this is non-polar, polar, aqueous soluble, organic soluble. You take first fractions. Then what you do is, there are different methods. One is you can do fractional distillation, that is one. Another one is a column chromatography. What you do is silica gel column is there, you can put it on the top of the column. Then depending on polarity, they elute to the different solvents. That is one way to do it. Another one is HPLC, chromatography. That is also like an automated column chromatography. That is HPLC, flash chromatography, different techniques. There are so many techniques are available now. Yeah. So Professor Pankaj is another new addition for me, for a list of my new friends after coming here.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you first of all for delivering such a nice lecture within us. And I am Musar Shamim, and I am a student of MSc Chemistry first semester. I have just joined this prestigious university. So, sir, I have a question in my mind, that is deflating of leaf sample necessary prior to extraction, as sir has already raised a question regarding extraction. So you have also asked that there are so many methods for extraction. So is deflating of leaf sample necessary prior to extraction?
Say it again. All right.
Sir, is deflating of leaf sample necessary prior to extraction?
Probably somebody can.
Perhaps he is asking for getting the lead molecule.
Okay.
So would it depend upon the extraction technique, which technique you should go for?
Oh yes, of course. You need to follow different techniques, and which technique, if you follow, that particular molecule is coming in good yields. Like each essential oil or anything, and you take natural extract that contains so many molecules, right? And again, you don't want to isolate every molecule. You don't want to improve yield for every molecule. So first you need to find out which molecule is useful. For that you need only small quantities, so that you can isolate. But once you identify a good molecule, then you need to improve the yield, or improve the yield in the sense like that particular compound. If it is a polar, you have to modify with solvents, or if it is whatever, depending on techniques, various techniques, you can improve the yield of that particular one. I don't know if I answered the question.
Thank you, sir. So is ethanol and ethyl acetate good solvent for extraction from medicinal plant?
It's difficult to justify one particular solvent. Again, depending on polarity of the molecule, polarity of the extract, then ethyl acetate people use, of course. And like only thing is we need to point out, particularly when you are scaling up in industry, some chlorinated solvents like dichloromethane, we need to avoid actually. Whatever which you can use environmentally safe solvents, better to use at least in the large scale. For in laboratory settings and in hoods, we are okay actually. Okay.
Sir, have you used any metal catalyst regarding preparation of your product?
Yes, we use, depending on, we use of course, palladium.
So then, if you are using metal catalyst, then there may be some disadvantages of that catalyst in that product also. So what should we do in that case?
You have to come up with a new methods which you don't use metals. So of course there are methods available, but so wherever possible, don't use metals. If you think that metals are going to be a problem, but again, some reactions without, it's like suppose if you want to do hydrogenation, without palladium you can't do the hydrogenation. There are some methods we have to use. We have no option. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
It's a general question. Like you said, hanamycin, one of the drug for
Yes, sir.
salmonella and other things. But there are several drugs for salmonella, and how do you see is this project going further? Because there are several antibiotics which were very fantastic against salmonella.
So salmonella, that's what they do. We don't have any specific one. We have only broad antibiotic they use for salmonella. Salmonella, this particular one, at least we believe that we tested for various other bacteria. It did not show. It looks like seems to be selective for salmonella. And that's where it becomes more interesting. And if you can develop selectively for salmonella, that will be useful. Because you don't want to use a broad antibiotic because that will create resistance for other bacteria also. You need to be selective for one particular bacteria. It will be good. So, as far as this one, still we are working on this one. We don't know. Anything can happen.
Thank you for your talk. I am not from your field, but I have a very general question which is a bit different. Asking you something, maybe you have told that you are working on the molecules which you extract from, get from natural resources, plants, medicine plants and other things. We in India have a very big heritage, where we have medicinal properties of the various types of plants, like in Ayurveda. So, how much those resources and that knowledge helps you in taking lead to get better medicines out of that and put it into a better way in market wise it's good.
Thank you for that question. Exactly, that's what we do in our IIM. IIM, we use the knowledge of traditional knowledge and we identify those plants and also identify, like suppose for example, Guduchi, Ashwagandha, some of those plants we already know from Ayurveda knowledge. So those plants we work on them. There's several plants like that. In addition to that, we are also trying to create scientific validation for most of these Ayurvedic medicines. Like most of the Ayurvedic medicine, they don't have scientific support. Although it's based on experience, people prescribe, but there is no scientific validation. That's one of the mandate of our IIM. So we work on that one. We continue to work on that one. So that's good question.
Sir, just one query answer to that. For example, if for something that's extracted out of a natural resource and you synthesize it, later on manufacture it, patent it and sell it to the world at large, and if any community has a traditional knowledge of that particular product, do you pay something back to the traditional community? For example, there was a Carney-like case and with this regional search authority that time, it had a patent. Has something to been given back to the community who had a traditional knowledge and control over that particular knowledge? Because there is a biodiversity act and access and benefit sharing protocols at the international level.
I know, I see your point, but I don't know whether any mechanism like that or maybe so far that nothing happened like that. Paying to original inventor you are talking about, that knowledge. Yes. But even sometimes that who invented that knowledge may not be existing also people, because sometimes we use very traditional knowledge.
Because recently there was a case because all this under Tantri's name, Baba Ramdev, whatever he is doing it, a case of biodiversity board where they say that they have to pay back to the traditional communities also. This is a recent case which has come in the Karnataka State Biodiversity.
Yeah, I also read about that one, but again, I don't have much details about that one, but of course, it's a good idea to give credit to those people who originally has that one. Again, and coming back to, as such, you cannot patent actually those which are related to like natural sources, like natural products or natural plants, those things you can't.
for delivering such an interesting and informative talk on how natural molecules can be further designed and modified for various societal needs. Now, may I request our esteemed Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Kumar Dhar, to present our venerated speaker, Dr. D. Srinivasa Reddy, with a memento as an expression of our gratitude. Thank you, sir. May I also request Professor Prakash Antal, Dean Student Welfare, to present token of our respect to our worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Kumar. Thank you, sir. May I now request again to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Kumar Dhar, to deliver his presidential remarks on the occasion.
So I have a disadvantage that I am not so tall that you can see me. So I have to come out of it either because there is no base here. Anyway, good afternoon to everybody and yeah, okay, they have made some arrangement. Now you can see me. Our esteemed guest and the keynote speaker today, Dr. D. Srinivasa Reddy, as my colleagues have already referred him as DSR. So from today onwards, I will also, if you don't mind, I will also be referring you by the same. Okay, so thank you so much, and it was really a great pleasure and an honor to listen to DSR. I have on the dais my esteemed colleagues, Professor Rajnikant, Dean, Faculty of Science and Director of the College Development Council. And we have Professor Kamal Kapoor, the Head of the Department of Chemistry. And I would say that it's because of him that we could invite DSR today to this curtain raiser, and we were fortunate to listen to his wonderful talk. So then I do have my esteemed colleague Professor Yashpal Sharma, former head of the Department of Botany, a dear colleague, and on dais again I have another very dear colleague, Professor Prakash Antal, who is I would say the person who, despite being a person from a non-science background, is celebrating science. So, and he is being involved right through in organizing this event. And again, in front of me, I have many more colleagues, Professor Rupma Gandota, Dean, Faculty of Life Sciences, Professor Pankaj Srivastava from Geology Department, our esteemed Registrar, Professor Arvind Disrotia, Professor Namrata Sharma, former Head of the Department of Botany, and all the other colleagues. If I continue naming each one of you, then it will be, the DSR will tell me that I am short of time. So all their colleagues who are here, and above all, the research scholars of this prestigious university and the students, whom I am really happy that I could see first semester student who has joined. So, welcome to all of you to this prestigious university, University of Jammu. We are proud that Jammu University is not only done a lot of work, research work for which it is known and for which we have already been recognized by various national and international agencies. We are proud to have research projects at the national as well as international level. We were among the first 29 universities in the country who were awarded the PERS grants by the Department of Science and Technology several years back, and currently it is for the information of the students who have just joined the University of Jammu. To tell you that we are now in the second phase of PERS grants with a grant of about 17 crore rupees. And I would say that from the today's lecture, which we are holding as a curtain raiser to the week-long celebrations of National Science Day, which falls on 28th of February, I wish to invite all of you, the way you have today participated in this, but in much more strength you need to participate on 28th of February, where we will have a wonderful talk again by an eminent scientist come politician, I would say, and an honorable minister. So all of you must join on 28th in the General Zorawar Singh Auditorium for that lecture. Now, today's talk, I don't think I need to again reiterate why we are celebrating National Science Day, but definitely with the talk of the eminent scientist of our country, Dr. Reddy. He talked about efforts towards solving societal problems using organic synthesis. Now his field is organic chemistry, but I would like to emphasize on the first few words in that lecture, that is the efforts towards solving societal problems. I think we as scientists have a major role, that we are here to solve the problems which are being faced by the society. Many a times there's a debate whether we should be working on the basic problems, basic areas of research, or we should do applied research. But I would say that as he has really wonderfully exemplified, that it all starts from something basic. You have to understand some basic thing, and gradually over the period of time, some molecule which was discovered somewhere in 1971, the utility of that molecule can be found today. So, of course, it's a long journey. He has told you the drug discovery process. It's a very long journey, and one has to really have that kind of patience. That's why he said, the student many a times gets stuck. Many a times our research scholars feel that we have done research work for 5 years and now we are not able to get results. They get kind of disheartened. So the ideas which you get from these kind of talks, these kind of lectures, is that one doesn't have to lose heart. It's a long journey, but you have to have that kind of patience and perseverance. You have to keep on trying, and you will see that one day success will be yours, and that success will perhaps be the success for which you will be known throughout your life. That one molecule, that one drug, as we have seen that his drug is now in phase 2 trials. So one can imagine when that becomes a drug, so what would be the kind of glory, what would be the kind of success, what would be the kind of satisfaction which he will have. So that is the story of every one of us. We have to keep on trying, we have to keep on doing research, and we have to keep ourselves motivated to do that kind of research. Another thing which I, just because the time is limited, I think he had told me that he would like to go immediately. Just I am holding to say that we are looking towards IIM for collaborations, We already have an MOU in place with you, sir. It's already there. But I think we need to reactivate it. And we were 3 people who were responsible for signing of MOU. And I was one, Professor Kamal Kapoor was another. So that time we did have the MOU, and many of our students, research scholars, have been visiting your laboratory and they are getting the kind of research facilities. But I would say that we need to rejuvenate that with your coming. We need to really rejuvenate that kind of an MOU, and also an area which I would like to put forth is that in terms of the startups, we need your help, because we want our students to go into that startup area, start some kind of research involving the industry, because we depend on you in terms of getting the industries to the university. So I am seeking your wholehearted support and intervention in these areas, and as you have already told me several times, 2-3 times we met, you have shown your interest in collaborating with the university. We have fantastic research faculty here, students here who would be interested to work on areas of mutual interest. Of course, in the last 2 years, we have tried to strengthen our research infrastructure. I would like to mention that under RUSA, almost all the departments, science departments of the university, they have been able to build infrastructure, the scientific infrastructure in terms of equipment. Also under PERS grant, we have been doing that. And we have also provided grants, some startup grants to our younger faculty members, even to the senior faculty members for meeting their research needs. So I think university per se, in the last 2 years, we have tried to create that ecosystem where we are providing all the basic facilities to our faculty members and research scholars. And above all, I would say that in the last year, Corona period, we thought that should provide our research scholars the facilities in terms of journals. We have provided them access to more than 1,000 journals, many thousands of e-books and other things. This was only done in order to create that kind of atmosphere. But I think now it all depends on the young faculty and even the senior faculty members to channelize their energies to find such students, as he has very rightly said that it is the students who will make or mar your career. So I think we need to seriously think about these aspects, involve good students who are really inclined, who are interested to do research, and then develop joint research projects with the scientists from IIM. Some of them are already in touch with us and we are trying to develop such programs. But for others, you will have to, I would request for your intervention to develop such kind of proposals involving the industries as well, because that is where we would need your help. So with this, I think I have spoken enough, and I, on my behalf, would also like to extend sincere thanks to DSR for accepting our invitation today and being with us this morning. It was really a wonderful lecture, and we all thoroughly enjoyed this lecture. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to your being with us in near future as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging and motivating remark. Feeling gratitude and not expressing, it is like wrapping a present and not having it. Now I invite Professor Yashpal Sharma, former head Department of Botany, to present formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mudrika. Well, among what matters the most is the matter itself. And this is what we have, witnessed in today's very thought-provoking and very curious talk for all of us. And you have seen, all of you, that how synthetic organic chemists have power to replicate some of the most intriguing molecules of living nature to the lab and apply their developed synthetic strategies and technologies to construct variations of them. And you know, this leads to what we call as fine art. And this fine art going into precise science is what actually makes the difference. It is what actually is need of the hour. And you have seen yourself that how the synthetic organics and technologies have been able to solve some of the problems of the mankind, some of the problems confronting all of us, including those in pharmaceutical sector, that means the drug discoveries, repellents, pheromones, and above all agrochemicals for the crop protection and environmental protection. So that has been the hallmark of this wonderful, presentation over here. Respected keynote speaker of today's event, Dr. D. Srinivasa Reddy, Director, IIIM Jammu, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Manoj Dhar, faculty members of the university, including the senior deans, rectors, directors, head of the departments, research scholars, students, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the University of Jammu, I would like to sincerely thank and acknowledge the gracious presence of our keynote speaker, Dr. D. Srinivasa Reddy, DSR, Director, IIIM Medicine, Jammu, who took his time out for his very busy schedule and accepted our invitation to be amongst all of us. Sir, you enlightened all of us about the new vistas in organic synthesis and have enlightened us about how to solve the basic problems confronting all of us. And you explained things so differently, diligently, and lucidly that even the non-science people could, get curious to know more about this very interesting subject, very interesting science. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, I need not say many things about our very dynamic, young, visionary Vice Chancellor, sir. Because this is what we have seen today, that while on one hand, the organic chemist has done the meticulous job of maneuvering the plant molecules, our Vice Chancellor, besides his all administrative acumen, is also involved in planning and modifying the biological organisms for working for humanity. So, sir, your visionary leadership has always been a matter of pride for all of us, and the way you have, given the go-ahead to all of us for these scientific gatherings is certainly a matter of pride to reckon with all the time. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. We are truly humbled by the gracious presence of our Dean Sciences and Director College Development Council, Professor Rajnikant, a well-known physicist who is very expert in particularly X-ray diffraction technology and other allied areas. So your presence is also acknowledged, sir. Thank you very much. I need to thank Professor Kamal Kapoor, who happens to be my senior colleague, and of course I consider him to be as a friend. I don't know whether he accepts that or not, but I consider because he has always been smiling and saying, oh yaar, ye to ho jayega. So that's really good. And Dr. Kapoor, you're thanked for this and keep guiding us all the time. I'm also thankful to the Dean of the Life Sciences, other deans, heads of the departments, and all the faculty members of the university fraternity and the scientists, those who are attending this lecture. And I'm also thankful to Professor Arvind Jasrotia, our very smiling and spiritual registrar, who besides his administrative skills is also making us to go towards the Adhyatma, spiritual path of life as well, and that is quite satisfying. Thank you, Arvind sir. I'm also thankful to the Dean Students Welfare, Professor Prakash Antahal, and the support staff of the DSW for the complete preparation of this event in a very short span. Dr. Prakash, you have really made the best arrangements for this program. Thank you wholeheartedly for this kind gesture from your side. I'm also thankful to Dr. Madhurika, who has very smoothly conducted the proceedings of today's function. And particularly I would like to mention the continued support received from the Vice Chancellor Secretariat as well as from the security wing of the Dean Students Welfare. They all have been, on toes from the day it was decided that we are going to hold the Science Day celebrations, and today it's a curtain raiser, so it's a wonderful beginning, I believe. I wish to thank everyone in the audience. You have been a great audience, listening to every aspect of the lecture very, very keenly and patiently, and I guess they all need a round of applause for this. In the end, I would also like to thank the press and media, both print and electronic, and now virtual as well as offline, and they have always been generous in giving wide coverage to such events, because ultimately these things should percolate deep into the society for their well-being, for all of us well-being. So once again, I wish to thank everyone, of course, Ifra, Sumit, and others from the Dean Student Welfare. Yes, Dr. Vinay Chauhan also sitting over here. Mansi. I can see Mansi has been very, active from the day one, giving all invitations, everything. And Dr. Pankaj, Madam Rupma, Professor Seema, then Professor Sanjana, Dr. Namrata, Binu, and all other faculty members. So kindly pardon me if I have missed anybody's name, but I extend my wholehearted thanks to all of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your kind acknowledgement. Now I would invite all of you to join for a cup of tea.